These are beautiful days. Now, young Adam, we've spoken quite a few times. You've been sort of, doing comedy for how many? Like,
15 years.
15 years?
15 years.
So that feeling of like putting something out there or putting something together that sort of represents you up until now, is that something that you've been thinking about for a while? Is it something that you felt you needed to do?
Yeah, it's got to the kind of point, I suppose, where I've been working with so many good acts and I've been working in so many great venues, but I've also been doing a lot of the same kind of jokes. Do you know what I mean? You stick with what you're comfortable with what you know kind of resonates with people, with what kind of works, but you also need to keep yourself on your toes and stay kind of match fit as well. So I suppose the idea here is to capture some of the good stuff in one place forever, but it's also to kind of give me the little bit of a boot up a bum to go writing some new material and trying some new stuff, push myself outside of my comfort zones as well. So I'm trying to do a little bit of everything, and I suppose there's been a big kind of wave of these kind of crowd work comedians coming through. And some people have different feelings about it, but it's always been a staple of what I do. So I think for the first time I'm going to try and sew in a little bit of that into next week's show as well. So you get a little bit of everything, like, because I am conscious and aware that some people like to catch that kind of off the cuff kind of banter. So I'm not going to not do any of that,
I'm always thinking about the one thing about comedy is that unlike any other art form or performance, that you can, like a musician needs to play the hits and forever. Like, unless you're Billy Connolly or maybe Jackie Mason, people don't want to hear what they heard last year. It's almost like they need you to keep growing and keep bouncing, which is so tough, because the fact is some material is just beautiful and it's just perfect, and I'm happy to hear a great joke again, but I'm guessing from your point of view, that feeling of always having to work with different crowds and what they need, and this will work on this particular crowd and I can go back a little bit into something, I'm sure that's quite a head wrecker at times, just sort of keeping your audience happy, knowing what they would like, because you've got tons of material.
Yeah, and it's tough as well, because I would say that, like, I would never say that I'm like one of these, real joke writers who sits down with pen and paper and tries to construct something very, very clever in my comedy. I actually tell stories, and most of the stories that I tell are somewhat true to me. They are things that have happened to me, or my experiences of the world, or things that kind of make me giggle inside. So when you're kind of being true to yourself and true to your own stories, like, those stories can run out unless you're out there experiencing the world or trying to capture your world in a different way of thinking, in a way that is digestible for an audience. So, like, it might sound mundane to some people to be, talking about married life or home life, but there's a reason why, comedians go back there, and that's because that's the world around them. That's what they're living and breathing every day. So you will get comedians that are like that. They stay true to what they know and what they live and what they experience. I'm a little bit like that. So I try and share a lot of the stories of my life, or things that I found kind of quirky or funny or whatever it is. But yes, you're right, there could be a challenge in that, because you're not experiencing those big stories every single day, and that's why you might kind of rest on the ones that really work and really resonate with people.
Now, I'm thinking of Irish comedy in particular. There was a great wave, and I'm trying to think when the year was, but I know that over in Scotland, when they had the Do You Think You're Funny award, suddenly they changed it, Do You Think You're Irish, because like Dylan Moran and Jason Byrne and Tommy Tiernan, everybody was coming out and just seemed to be all Irish. And at that time, comedy was the new rock and roll. To me now, comedy is the new kind of country music, or it's the new middle of the road. There is a sort of a maturity that's come where anything's possible, any kind of comedian's possible. You don't have to be young and cool and hip. There's a sort of, like music itself, there's just a huge amount of different types of comedian out there. Do you find yourself sort of aiming to be a particular type of comedian, or do you just sort of find, well, this is what I do, this is what I like?
No, because I think being a comedian and doing comedy is an extension of self, and all I'm trying to do is connect with people in the real world, and comedy is a vehicle by which I connect with people. I would say outside of comedy, I've always tried to bring a bit of light and laughter into my personal relationships, and as you know, like in the day job, my day job's all about real world connections as well, connecting with other human beings. So I'm not trying to be anything, I'm trying to share who I am. That will resonate with some, it won't with others, and that's absolutely okay. But if I can connect people around that and they find some joy in that, and maybe if they find someone the stuff I say to be truthful to their lives, and it becomes something that we share together, or I'm speaking essentially what they're thinking inside their mind, or what they've experienced but never really thought to say out loud, well, they're the sweet spots, because that is what good comedy is. It's saying out loud what other people have never thought to say out loud but instantly feel it. But for me, no, I'm not trying to create a character, create a being, be anything like, really, really in depth, and I'm just being me, and I'm hoping that me is enough for other people to, as I say, laugh a little bit, and just take a little time out from the real world kind of thing.
Well, you mentioned, you're working with Jigsaw and just working with like mental health, and certainly when you're working with young people who need that sort of, a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance. There is a lot of, obviously crossover that great comedy does have that sort of therapeutic thing, that you laugh at things that you have difficulty maybe understanding, or you're able to, prick the bubble of certain types of thinking. And comedy has that great power always to take what may be dark subjects and actually, put them out into the light. People like Gilbert Gottfried can sort of take something that you shouldn't really talk about, and it just feels better because he did bring it out there. He let everybody kind of have that release, and that, I'm guessing there's a huge amount of that for you, that there's not a huge amount of difference between, the work you do, as you say, during the week and the work you do up on stage. There's a kind of a, I'm not going to go as far as to say it's all therapy, but it certainly helps people.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Again, you're trying to speak truth. I'm not trying to be clever with words. I'm trying to speak what is the truth, and maybe I'll bundle it up in a very nice little package where, again, it's not the way other people would communicate it, but ultimately it does go back to that. It's speaking truth. It's connections. Do you know what I mean? It's about building those kind of connections with other people. And I think any subject, you can find a light in any subject if you do it the right way. There's certain things that I wouldn't talk about because I don't know how to bring light to those, because I've not lived those experiences. But when it comes to mental health, well, I would say, I have a lot of experience around mental health, both personal experience and then professional experience. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for bringing light in there. So little bits of comedy creep into my day job. But also, when it comes to performing, on stage every weekend, there'll be plenty of kind of examples of, things I've experienced that relate to exactly what you're talking about. A little bit more real, where I try and bring that light in again. Especially, little topic. I always say I'm not a political comedian, but I'll still say a couple of things that are political, and I think in the right tone and with the right light, it reminds people that we should ridicule some of these things that at times really annoy us and generate real feelings. Do you know what I mean? I think it's okay to balance that scale with some light sometimes, and give them a bit of a hard time.
Now we should say to people, it's Thursday the 22nd. I'm trying to the date. Yes. So you're here. It's going to be a $5. You're recording it for YouTube, so it's going to be a very special night for you because it's going to be a sort of a celebration of what you've done so far, and then also a kind of a look to what you're going to do with new material and all that. So very, very kind of a nice night for people to come down to. We'll put all the information above and the links for the tickets and all that. But most importantly, have any good little short one-liner jokes to finish with?
Do you know, I was on the radio this morning and I said the biggest faux pas is when people ask comedians.
Because I have a good joke for you, and I thought I should ask you for a good joke. If you I know it's a dreadful thing. It's like saying, musician, can you sing me a song like in the middle of nowhere?
And I've always said to myself, I should prep myself a one-liner that is one of my one-liners, but I just don't do one-liners. Do you know what I mean?
I love bad pun jokes. I'll give you two, and you can use any of these if you feel like it. Guy says to his boss, I gotta go home early, got something to do. He says, no worries, that's not a problem, just gotta make up the time. He says, okay, let's say it's 6:10. Not great.
That's all right. That's not bad. I like that.
And the other one I like is, I'm very proud of myself. I just finished a jigsaw puzzle in 3 weeks. On the box it said 5 to 7 years.
Very